One of the aspects of music that we were taught early on in music school is modes. Basically, take a major scale and start it on a different note, but why are these important? Why would you use them? Well, that's my goal to explain here. I never understood modes until I started analyzing film music and dabbling into the psychology and emotions in music. There tends to be this focus on the, quote, Dorian sound.
But then in the fourth bar, we get this lift with a C major chord. Now, C major contains an E natural, which doesn't belong in G minor, so this catches our ears off guard and places us in a Dorian context.
Or the Lydian sound.
Now that sound of the sharp 4 or the Lydian sound or the Lydian mode can be best described by...
Wow, I mean a sharp 4 gives a sense of hopefulness and rise.
It can also be described as celestial or heavenly if it's on piano, like that.
Which focuses more on the chord structure of the modes.
That's all fun and dandy, but let's talk about the chords. I think that's a little bit more interesting.
But I want to look more at melodies and their function. I will mention the use of an altered chord here and there, but it's to emphasize the effect of the altered notes. Remember too that modes are assigned certain tropes, which aren't always true, so I'll do my best to show different uses of the modes. Since companies, including YouTube, don't really care about fair use of these examples, and if you like what I do and want to support me, consider buying me a drink at the link in the description. And with that, let's dive into modes and see why they are important and how they are used. And I'll provide a handful of examples as well, but note there are a lot more than what I'll show here. The Ionian mode is quite simple and straightforward. It's just your major scale. Since this is the most common scale used, everything is based around this mode. But what I can show here to gear you up for what is to come in this video are the note tendencies and how they affect the mode. They can either be up, down, or neutral, and here, as well as the other modes, are my interpretations of the tendencies, so you may see some differences with others. For Ionian, the second is neutral as well as the third, but the third's relationship to the tonic will determine whether or not it's a major or minor mode. The fourth has a downward tendency, like in a 4/3 suspension. The fifth is a stabilizer with the tonic, the sixth is neutral, and the seventh has an upward tendency towards the tonic, like in this example from Mahler 3. While the music is in a minor key, the raised seventh really pushes to go to the tonic. Aeolian is the natural minor scale, having a lowered 3rd, 6th, and 7th scale degrees from the major scale. There isn't a lot to say, since it's usually altered, by the 7th and sometimes 6th scale degrees being raised for a harmonic or melodic minor sound. The 7th is more commonly raised, so there's a strong dominant chord in the progression. So let's take a look at the tendencies from the natural minor. The second is neutral. The third is neutral, but kinda has a downward tendency now. It defines the tonal center, but because it's lowered, the note may want to fall towards the tonic, like in this example from Gears of War. The fourth is neutral now to down, since the third is a little bit further away. The fifth is still the stabilizer, and both the 6th and 7th scale degrees have downward tendencies. So the minor has a lot of downward tendencies, which contributes to the sad feeling, but this isn't universally true. Smash Brawl, Ultimate, use Aeolian for fighting music. Nate's theme from Uncharted for an adventurous feel, Flight to Neverland from Hook starts in Aeolian before changing keys, probably reflecting Peter's view of himself throughout the movie. So a down feeling for the Aeolian section. The opening transition of Star Trek Nemesis is also in Aeolian and has a very big danger vibe. I want to get Locrian out of the way, as the others are the more used modes. Locrian is a minor mode and has a lot of lowered pitches, including the fifth, which destabilizes the tonal center, giving the tonic triad a diminished quality, making it a harder key to write for and why it's rarely used. This is also the reason it was the subject to the challenge by Adam Neely, where 5 composers wrote a piece in Locrian. I have a hard time determining what the tendencies are, since this mode is not very stable. All the pitches would seemingly have a downward tendency. This, of course, does not mean it isn't written for. So here's a great melody of a folk song in Locrian, granted the sixth isn't used, as well as a small sample from Adam Neely's challenge video.
Digging graves is my delight, digging graves for you to lie in. Digging graves from morn till night, I earns me living from the dying. Digging graves the whole day long, and as I dig I sing this song to anybody that comes along. Dust to dust and ashes to ashes, and thus I sing my song.
Surf rock vibes. Nice panning. Ambulance effect.
Paul has a very beautiful voice. Whoa.
So delicate. Guitar? No, just bass. Trying to be a guitar.
Dorian is a minor mode with a lowered third and seventh, but the sixth is raised from the natural minor. As for our tendency tones, the second is neutral, the third is neutral to down, fourth is neutral, fifth is stable, sixth is neutral, and the seventh is downward. Comparing this mode to the natural minor, we have a raised sixth, so it no longer has that tendency to want to go to the fifth, but also this gives us a major 4 chord. The significance of this is a more uplifting feeling. You have the minor feeling of sadness, but there's a sense of uplift and maybe a determination feeling. With proper implementation of it, it can sound Celtic as well. Examples of Dorian mode are in Scarborough Fair, which is the typical go-to for Dorian.
Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Remember me to one who lives there. He once was a true love of mine.
For the same Celtic feel, James Horner used it in The Devil's Own. Smash Melee's menu theme as well as Smash 4's theme use Dorian for the ready to go and fight feeling. The Rohan theme for something down but a hint of hope. The Drunken Sailor Shanty, which to me doesn't sound happy or sad, but very neutral.
What will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning? Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning.
There's this theme from Mulan as well, although it has pentatonic vibes. And then we have the theme to Halo and the Song of Time from The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time for the old Gregorian chant style. Phrygian is a minor mode with the added lowered second, and looking at the tendencies, there's a lot of downward tendencies. The second and third are down, the fourth is neutral, fifth is stable, and sixth and seventh are down. Even though we have all the downward motion, the lowered second gives us a major 2 chord. So while you might think this would make things sadder in general, since it adds a major chord, there's a little more uplift. But unlike in the Dorian mode, here it's more of that color since the flat 2 wants to resolve down usually. Our 5 chord is now diminished though, so we don't have as strong as a resolution back to the tonic, aiding in the quote Phrygian sound. In The Nightmare Before Christmas, Danny Elfman uses a Phrygian mode cadence on that flat 2 in several tracks.
I sense there's something in the wind.
There were objects so peculiar they were not to be believed, all around things to tantalize my brain. And since I am dead, I can take off my head to recite Shakespearean quotations.
Aside from the second note in this track called Under Martial Law from Final Fantasy VI, is also in Phrygian. Phrygian, in a variation called Phrygian dominant, which just means that the third is raised, has been the go-to mode for Middle Eastern and Bollywood style music. So we have Phrygian in Game On from the Guild.
Boot up, embrace the feeling. The start button is the portal to your being. Turn on, it's a pleasure device. Game with me, it's the ultimate spice. I promise you it won't ever be dull. In a world you're all powerful. Above you, don't be afraid. It's Tuesday night, let's do this raid.
Game on! Let me when we party it sizzles. Won't let the spell fizzle.
Grab the reins, don't re-roll. Point and click, take control.
And here's Phrygian dominant in I Hate My Life by Santosh Shobhan.
చిన్న లైఫ్ ఏంటో చిరాకు తెప్పిస్తున్నది చిన్నప్పటి నుంచింతేగా ఇంచైనా చేంజ్ అవ్వకున్నది అందరికీ హ్యాపీ
As a bonus, a scale called the double harmonic scale, which is a flat 2 and a flat 6, but the 3 and 7 are raised, is another Middle Eastern sounding scale, used in the Bacchanal by Saint-Saëns and Gobi's Valley in Banjo-Kazooie by Grant Kirkhope. Lydian is a major mode with raised fourth, changing a falling tendency to a raised one. So the second and third are now neutral, the fourth is upward, the fifth is still the stabilizer, the sixth is neutral, and the seventh is up. So Lydian has an upward or uplifting feeling. Harmonically, it gives us a major 2 instead of a minor. Our 4 chord is sadly gone now, being a diminished chord and replaced by a minor 7 chord for different colors with our predominant chords. Looking at some examples, The Simpsons is mostly in Lydian with some chromaticism. You'll see a lot of people saying Lydian dominant, which just means there's a sharp 4 and a flat 7, and there are plenty of natural 7s. Mixolydian is a major mode with a lowered 7th. This mode to me has a very stable feeling, with 2 downward tendencies and the rest neutral, but it has a major feeling to it. The reason for the stable feeling in no direction is the lack of a dominant chord, Instead, we get a major 7 chord, which functions as the dominant, but doesn't have the same drive back to the tonic, so we have this continuous and ongoing feeling, which explains why it's used a lot for adventure-style music. Since I mentioned the altered modes for Lydian and Phrygian earlier, I know one here as well. The opening trumpet solo to Star Trek Nemesis is in Mixolydian flat 6, which just means the 6th scale degree is also flat. Wikipedia states this starts with an augmented chord, which is correct and harmonically speaking. But if it were a true augmented chord, the third note would be a sharp 5, or an A sharp in this case. But considering there are multiple A naturals and B flats, calling it an augmented chord is wrong in my analysis. As a bonus, I want to mention the different types of 7th chords. I always thought it was weird that there were 4 options and 3 seemed reasonable to me at the time. The major 7, major 7, and minor 7. But the minor 7 never made any sense to me, and I thought it would never be used. The major 7 is our dominant 7 chord, adding tension and using tendency tones to lead us back to the tonic chord. The major 7 adds color to the chord, as does the minor 7. But where would the major 7 be used? A quick search online and you see it's used as the James Bond chord and adding in that mystery. Penn and Teller used it as the final chord in one of their shows as well. From here, you get interpretations like in Signal's music studio that it is a chord of mystery, and this lines up with the sound for when you find a secret in old Tomb Raider games. And when Mahler used it in his 3rd symphony, it has that same feeling, maybe a little bit with more tension here in the Mahler example. Just like with the modes I talked about don't necessarily have to fall into that same kind of sound, nor does this chord. The other big use of it is in Psycho, and I don't mean that shower chord, but the other memorable stabbing sound from that soundtrack. A very different use. I hope this helps you understand modes a bit better and what they can be used for. There may be some standard tropes of each, but remember that there are other uses as well. I didn't include any rock or metal examples as they have their own use for these modes, and I wanted to stick closer to orchestral examples as that's more of my field. Let me know your thoughts on modes and other examples you're aware of. If you like what I do and want to support me financially, you can buy me a drink at the link in the description. And with that, I will see you in the next video.